Just talk us through, what is the latest with Thames Water?
Well, I can't really comment, for example, the financial position of a private company, and you wouldn't expect me to. But what I can reassure you and your viewers of is that whatever happens or transpires over the coming weeks and months, the water will continue to flow. The government and Ofwat have contingency measures for exactly the kind of circumstances that may play out here, yet to be seen. And that's basically where we are with it.
I mean, one of those is temporary public ownership, right? I mean, some might argue that permanent nationalisation could be the way forward anyway.
Well, as I say, I certainly don't want to start speculating on those kind of issues. We've got to really see how things develop. But what I can reassure you of is that we absolutely have contingency plans in place for any eventuality.
You can see why people might be angry, though, right? Bills are going up, sewage is going into the sea, and yet water companies paid out £1.4 billion in dividends last year. That's up from £540 million the last year.
Well, the government, working through Ofwat, actually has put in to effect new regulations which make sure that when it comes to dividends and indeed bonuses paid within these companies, that they relate to things that are not about environmental damage. So I think that's a very important point. And of course, we do have a plan, £56 billion worth of investment going forward to make sure that we reduce these sewage outflows. Now, an important point here, Sophie, is if you went back to 2010, less than 10% of those outflows were being monitored. So we didn't actually know what the situation was at that point.
I don't want
By the end of this year, it'll be about 100%.
Look, we know.
So we've got greater transparency and we've got a plan to deal with it as well.
Look, the sewage into the sea is one aspect of this. The wider point is people will look at the water companies and they'll be thinking, this isn't working. Why don't we nationalise them? You know, they were privatised in 1989. Since then, household bills up 40%. They paid out £66 billion in dividends to shareholders. No wonder that 63% of voters think they should be privatised.
Well, as I say, I'm not going to get into whether we should be wholesale, renationalisation. That is not our policy. The important thing that we need to do is to make sure we get the incentives properly aligned within those companies, and I've just explained how through Ofwat we're doing that, how we also invest the right amount of money going forward to make sure that we get on top of these sewage outflow issues, and that's what we're absolutely determined to do.
Do you not have any concerns then about the way that Thames Water is run?
Well, as I say, it just wouldn't be right for me to start commenting on a situation in a private company which may or may not be in various kinds of... That may or may not...
Yes, and that's why... Right? Everyone needs water coming out of the taps.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Surely you should be commenting on this.
In fact, since privatisation, the number of occasions on which people have experienced a lack of water coming out of the tap has reduced by over 80%, so a lot of progress has been made.
Kemi Badman says she's very concerned. Are you concerned?
Well, the important thing... Well, I'm concerned that there is resilience in terms of delivery within that sector, but I'm equally satisfied that the government and Ofwat have the appropriate contingencies in place such that whatever may materialise over the coming days, weeks and months, and I'm not going to speculate on that because I don't think it would be right to do so, that we will be in a position where water still flows out of the taps and everybody gets the supply that they expect and want.
OK.
Yeah.
I guess it perhaps points to a wider concern that people have about the economy, that times are really, really difficult at the minute. You know, you've got the cost of living going up, you've got mortgage bills spiralling, and there is a suspicion that this is partly, of course not wholly, but partly because firms aren't doing the right thing. And I just want to show you this from the International Monetary Fund. You know, they're hardly, kind of the woke left brigade, but they say that corporate profits now account for nearly half of all euro area inflation. The red bars that you can see there going up.
Yeah.
Corporate profits. What would you say to that?
Well, I think we take that kind of data, I know the Bank of England does as well, very seriously. So the Chancellor has just this morning, I think, met with the Competition Markets Authority, who are looking into, for example, unit pricing across the retail sector, particularly with a focus on food, where we have, for example, seen in countries like Germany and Portugal and Sweden, food inflation up at around 20%. It's a bit over 14% in our country, but it's still high. So we're certainly looking at that. Where we see supernormal profits due to big external shocks like raises in the energy prices, then we've gone in and we've had windfall taxes, which we've used in the case of energy companies to make sure that we have halved the average energy bill
so could
for
windfall
consumers
taxes
over the last
be
year.
used in sectors outside of the energy sector then?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on taxation policy. That's a matter for the Chancellor. But I think, to your point about excessive profits, where we saw it within the energy sector, we stepped in decisively. We did apply additional taxes in that particular case, windfall taxes, which we then used to lower people's fuel bills, energy bills. And I think that was the right thing to do.
And potentially could be the right thing. I know you don't want to speculate. You've been very, very well behaved on the interview. But do you have concerns about excess profits in other sectors other than energy? Well,
as I say, I think the Competition and Markets Authority are in discussions with the Chancellor. It is something that the Bank of England and others are looking at. What government can't, and in my opinion shouldn't be doing, is attempting to, from the ministry at the centre, try and control pricing across the whole of the economy. That's just not realistic. The important thing is you rely generally on competition to make sure that margins are at sensible levels. But as I say, particularly in the case of retail and food, the Chancellor has been working and liaising very closely with the Competition and Markets Authority. There is an ongoing investigation going on at the moment. They're looking closely at that, and I think that's the right approach.
And we've been talking about the cost of living and how difficult it is for people, and I guess there is nowhere where that is more acute than childcare. Like, it takes a huge proportion of people's monthly incomes.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
So from today, we have increased very substantially, in fact by 47%, the maximum amount that those on universal credit can claim against their childcare. So a huge increase in the amount of support that's going in there. The second thing we've done is one of the barriers to people taking on childcare has been they've had to find the money up front for that first month, and we're providing financial assistance to take that problem away. But you mentioned the cost of living, Sophie, and you're right to do so. My department has been right at the centre of getting out those cost of living payments to 8 million low-income households, £900, £150 to 6 million disabled people, £300 in December to those who are pensioners. We mentioned the energy price guarantee, keeping those energy costs down. I put up the benefits generally by 10.1%. Pensions went up by 10.1%. The national living wage for the low paid by 9.7%. Wherever we can target those who are most vulnerable and most in need, that is where we're providing that vital support.
Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the race to be London Mayor. And I'm sure this won't come as any surprise to you. Daniel Korski, now he, of course, is one of the final three in the running to be the Conservative candidate to be London Mayor. He's been accused of groping somebody, of touching their breast. He denies it. Should he withdraw?
Well, it's not for me, I think, to opine on that. I've read what I've read in the papers. I don't know the background to the situation. I know that a complaint has been made. But what I do know is where complaints have been made, they will be looked into very thoroughly. He, of course, has vigorously denied the allegations that have been made. But I don't know the realities of that situation.
How important is it for this complaint to be investigated quickly?
I think any serious complaint of that nature clearly needs to be looked at.
Who should investigate
carefully.
it?
Well, this would be determined by, I think, the nature of the complaint. And if I can talk in generalities...
We know what the complaint is, right?
Well,
what the allegation is.
Well, I personally, you may know more than me.
Well,
I don't know the full details, and you do need to look into complaints in details to determine, for example, whether it's a matter for the police or it's not a matter for the police. And I'm not sitting here today in your studio knowing the answer to that. So I think the important thing is that to know that it will be looked into appropriately where a formal
complaint is. Who's going to look into it, though? He's in the running to be the London Mayor. It feels like
it depends. It depends on it. Right. So where there's a formal complaint that's made, it could be anybody that's made a formal complaint about anybody else in that kind of situation. It's then down to the judgments of those where the complaint has been made as to where that goes on to. Now, does it become something that the police should be looking at? Is it something that's an internal process within a political party and so on? But what I'm saying is I'm not in a position, and probably you aren't either, with great respect, to be able to determine who exactly should be looking into a complaint of that nature.
Absolutely.
Given that we don't fully
I'm
know
asking
the details.
you who the complaint would be... I mean, to be completely honest, the reason I'm asking this is because the woman who's made this allegation says that it wasn't actually that easy to raise a complaint.
Yes.
And those around Daniel Korski were saying, well, no complaint has been made. She's like, OK, then I will try and make a complaint.
Yes.
And I don't know who's going to look into that.
Well,
I'm not saying that I should decide who looks into it, but I'm saying that I guess maybe people would have a bit more confidence in the process that you say should be followed if we knew what that process was.
So I think in any situation where there is a complainant involving something that is serious, in the first instance, it really depends on exactly what the nature of that complaint is as to where they go. So in this case, there is a political dimension to it, so I believe there is a complaint to government. But as to where it finally gets investigated, if that is what is appropriate, then I think it does depend on the precise nature and the details of exactly what happened or is alleged to have happened. And I don't feel in a position to sit here and say, Sophie, this is how it should happen, this is who should investigate it, or these should be the consequences.
Sure. I'm not asking you to decide. I just wondered who would...
No, or exactly how it should proceed.
Who are you supporting in the race to be London Mayor?
I haven't decided. I want to see, who... I want to see a bit more of them, but I've not decided at this stage.
Claire Coutinho said today that her support for Daniel Korski is on pause right now.
Well, as I say, I haven't made a decision as to who I would like to see in that position.
OK. There's one more thing that I do want to get your view on as well. This happened at the Ashes earlier today. Johnny Bairstow there, England cricketer.
Yes.
Carrying off a Just Stop Oil protester. What do you make of this? Do you think it's fair enough that people want to make a protest in a non-violent way? Yeah,
I believe in a free society in which people's voices should be heard, and I believe in protest. I don't believe in that. And I don't believe in people going to the Chelsea Flower Show and throwing things around. I don't believe in people sitting in the road and holding up the traffic and stopping ambulances and inconveniencing the general public.
Do you think the police should take the Johnny Bairstow approach of carrying them?
Well, we've given them the tools to be fairly robust in those situations, and I think, generally speaking, the police should be fairly robust. And I don't think it helps their cause. I think that's the irony of all this. I think most people look at that and just think that it's the wrong way to go about protesting.
OK, thank you very much.
Thank you.